Hello, everybody out there in listener world. You are listening to the Earful Tower podcast. We've been doing this for about 5 years now. 2 million downloads. Who would have thought it? This is a show about Paris, a show about France. My name's Oliver G, and every week I interview somebody interesting around Paris to hear their story and how they see Paris. And that's exactly what it is today. Alex Hillkurtz, my guest, an artist. How he sees Paris is something that comes in a lot in the second half of the interview, talking about light, how he paints it. He's a watercolor artist. He's also a storyboard artist. I got kind of sidetracked on that because I found it really fascinating at the beginning. But mostly we talk about his art. And I can recommend, if you want to get an idea of what this guy does, as you're listening, check him out on Instagram, Hillkurtz. So just Hillkurtz. Or Z, if you prefer, Hillkurtz. And maybe you'll become one of his new followers. 93,200. I'm looking at it as we speak. Check him out. Check out his website. It's at the top of the Instagram page. But more info on all that at the end of the episode, where I'm also going to read out a couple reviews that you guys have sent in. But first, a note, this show brought to you by the Patreon supporters, and if you're a Patreon supporter, you get all the extra benefits. And specific to this episode, the members have already watched a live video. See, I recorded this interview in Alex's studio, in his where he paints up on the top floor, looking out over the 6th arrondissement, and we did a kind of, you know, those shows that are like where a celebrity shows their house. It was kind of like that. I walked in there, we walked around, he showed where he paints, we went out on the balcony, looked at the view, and he answered a bunch of questions about the paintings on the wall, about his process, that kind of stuff, and people from around the world were watching, asking questions. You can watch the replay of that and hundreds of other videos and podcast episodes that are for Patreon members only. That's patreon.com/The Earful Tower. A little more about that at the end. Let's get into the episode with Alex. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Let's begin there. You are you're an artist, but you're also do you consider yourself artist first now, or you must have been storyboard man before?
Yeah, my background is storyboards. That's what I've done for a whole career. But the last 5 or so years, I've really transitioned into living this life of an artist. So yeah,
you can say living the dream. living the dream. We talked about this a little bit already, but I get the feeling it wasn't your dream to be an artist in Paris.
No, it wasn't a conscious decision. Yeah. It's something that has happened very organically. It's sort of unfolded pretty naturally, and so I do pinch myself and kind of know how lucky I am to be in this position. But yeah, it's very unexpected.
Well, let's talk about that, because I feel like a lot of people who even just dabble in art have a strong, the knowledge that Paris is so famous for having artists. You know, this is something that goes back for who knows how long.
Sure, yeah.
It's kind of like, did you have that before Paris was even on your radar, that it would be cool one day to be here?
Absolutely, yeah. My wife and I both have worked in the film industry for many years, and we've traveled for work. We lived in London for a couple of years. We were in New York for a while, and we were back in LA, and we thought, okay, it's time to settle down. Let's buy a house. We're going to be here. And then jokingly we said, "Oh, but if Paris calls."
Really?
And then, sure enough, Paris called. So we couldn't say no.
How did Paris call?
It was an offer for my wife. It was an animation studio. She does film editing for animated films, right. And there was a producer that they sort of knew each other. And
that's wild.
Yeah. Man. So because it's all a freelance world, and you never know where your next job is going to be or where it's going to come from, and this just happened to be at a studio here in Paris, and we thought, come on, we can't say no. That's an amazing opportunity.
Wow.
So yeah.
And so then you found yourself here. You lived in this studio where we're sitting right now, right?
Yeah, we came, and we didn't really even tell many people what we were doing, because in our minds we weren't moving to Paris. It was like, well, I don't know, the job might be horrible. This might fall apart next month. So we didn't really believe what we were doing. But yeah, here we are, years later. So the studio where we're sitting right now was our first apartment. It's pretty small for two people.
It's not, I mean, it depends, I guess.
It's a nice layout. It's sort of a studio apartment, but there is separation between the bed is not in the kitchen. It's not like that.
There are some terrible ones. Have you seen some of the pictures on?
I have. There's some down the hall.
Really? Yeah, the bed in the kitchen and a toilet like next to the
sink.
There's
a toilet down the hall for a couple of these apartments, and it's just like oof. Yeah. I mean,
by some standards, this is an amazing chambre de bonne.
Absolutely.
Maid's quarters.
Absolutely.
But of course, it's not. It'd be difficult to.
Yeah.
But people do it.
We did it for 3 years.
Yeah.
And it was great, but after a while, we needed a bigger place.
Sure.
So.
And then after a while, also, do you not do storyboards at all anymore?
I do. I was working on a job this morning.
Okay.
There are a couple directors that keep me busy, mainly with commercials.
Famous ones.
Yes, I have worked with some famous directors.
Can you tell us names, or you?
Yeah, I've worked with Cameron Crowe. I did Almost Famous with him, and Vanilla Sky, and a couple others. I've worked with Ben Affleck on Argo.
What's he like?
He was great on that project. It was so much fun.
That was a good movie. Is that the movie, the like thriller and the
Iranian embassy, and based on a true story. It was really fun, and it was one of those projects that everybody kind of knew from the get-go that this one's going to be good.
Yeah.
You read the script, it was so good, and then they start casting people, and everybody is amazing. And then I was in the art department, and every set that was sort of built or chosen, it was like at every step it was.
So you were so a storyboard artist. Is this what you say? Storyboard artist.
Yes,
is very involved in the.
Yeah, you are. You're sort of in on the ground floor of a project. You help kind of visualize the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Because when we talked about it just in the video that we did before, I kind of imagined that the director says to you, here's the idea, you draw it out for them, they go, yep, thanks, and they take it.
No, it's there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of revisions that happen. I'll sit with the director, just sort of one-on-one, like we are here.
Yeah.
We'll talk about a scene or a number of scenes, what they're envisioning or how they kind of see this going. Wow. We'll reference other movies or other any sort of visual thing.
So you're a bit of a film buff as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But when they, and I want to talk about Paris and painting. We'll get off the subject, but it's a rabbit hole and I'm enjoying it a lot. When someone, like a director, they watch Argo and they go, I really like the visuals of this. I got to find out who did the storyboard. Is that kind of how it works?
Maybe. I mean, film is such a collaborative thing. And, on Argo, I worked with the director, but I also worked closely with the cinematographer. Often it was the three of us. And then there's a production designer. There's so many people kind of contributing to the visuals of a movie. But I'm definitely one of those guys that's. Have
you done any Paris films? Set in Paris, I mean?
I haven't. I don't think I've ever drawn Paris.
But that brings us to Paris. Is Ben Affleck brooding and intense? Is Cameron Crowe? I bet he's intense.
No, Cameron Crowe is super great. He's great. He's just a fan of music and he's a fan of movies. So he's super down to earth. Ben Affleck was great on Argo. He was like really just. I think all of us were kind of hungry to make something great.
It makes me want to watch that movie again.
Yeah,
I'll be watching it for the storyboard. Okay, total topic change. I kind of brought it to Paris there. And then we went back, but we're in Paris now.
Paris won't let us go.
No, well, that's the story of our lives, isn't it? And maybe a lot of the listeners out there. But we're here now, we're talking about Paris. Storyboard's part of what you do, but another very big part, especially looking in this in your studio where we're sitting right now, is painting Paris.
Yes.
Let's get nerdy into it, right? What is it specifically that makes Paris a good city to paint?
originally I was very attracted to the architecture of this city. It's so different from where I grew up in California.
Whereabouts is that?
I grew up near San Francisco, and then I spent a lot of years in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Where, if something's 20 years old, it's ancient.
Same with where I'm from in Australia. It's the same kind of vibe.
So coming here, it's, cobblestones are older than America.
Right? Yeah.
So the architecture is spectacular, but the light is what that's what calls to me. And, over the last few years, I feel myself transitioning from sketching buildings to painting light. And I feel like it's the light of this city that kind of defines the form of buildings, the shape of things. It tells you what you're looking at. And it's just an amazing atmosphere.
So when you say you went from sketching buildings to, do you say capturing the light, painting the light?
Yeah.
You mean the same, you're looking at the same thing, but you're doing it differently? Is that what you mean?
I think so, yeah. When I first arrived in Paris, I had my sketchbook, and I would sketch a lot outside in the park or, on the street. And I would approach it like I would approach my storyboard. So it was pen and ink, maybe a little bit of graphite to add some shades of gray, but it was very sort of line drawings, sketches. And over the years, as I've gotten more into watercolor painting, it's much more about the colors, the tones, the values. So that's like this transition from a line sketch to kind of, what the light sort of feels like.
Well, let's try and figure out this light before we talk about capturing it, because as a layman, I guess I am. Am I a layman? Someone who doesn't understand.
Sure.
Surely the light in Paris is no different to the light in a village or a town on the same
latitude.
Same latitude.
Yes, and I've thought way too much about this.
Good. I want to hear it then, because a lot of people say I even say I like the light of Paris, but I don't really know what it is that...
And it is one of those kind of very hard to define things, but it has to do with latitude, definitely. I mean, Paris is further north than San Francisco or California. I think it's, probably the similar latitude to like a Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, okay.
I think.
But do you think there's a slew of cities on the same latitude all around the world?
No, I don't. I think latitude is one element, but I think the geography, the altitude, the color of the buildings. I think all of this plays into the atmosphere, and that affects the light. And I think for whatever reason, there's something about Paris there's a reason artists have kind of gravitated here and painted this city for hundreds of years. And there's, you go to Venice, you go to Rome, you go to Amsterdam, every city kind of has its own unique personality, and the light is slightly different. I just happen to be here in Paris, and I love it.
Well, you've painted. We were looking through your paintings just before. You've painted in all those cities that you just mentioned. I think, from what I was looking at. Do they not have a magical light of their own, or is it just is it like Paris has a magical light, or is it like Paris has the magical?
No. I think I really see each city having its own personality, and so the light in Venice is absolutely magical. It's a different kind. It's a different quality, but it's like two of your favorite meals or something. It's not one is amazing and the other just isn't. But they're different.
But there are cities like with bad light as well.
Yeah, I think there's cities that are challenged, light challenged.
like LA, right? It's just so, I don't know, it's just so bright that you can't do the like you can't go painting things there.
LA is very stark. It's very bright. The architecture is very plain. Funnily enough, I met a Parisian artist that spends part of his time in Los Angeles painting, and I love the way he paints LA.
Yeah.
LA doesn't really call to me kind of aesthetically, like as a city, it doesn't sing to me.
Yeah.
But his paintings are so amazing.
That's cool.
So I think it depends on Maybe it's because he's a foreigner. You know, I don't know.
I've often thought, like, weirdly, it'd be cool to listen to a podcast by a French person who's moved to Australia.
Yeah.
There's a similar thing that I did here. You know, and they find the Australians really unusual or whatever.
Yeah, so exotic
and
and
I would love to
adventurous.
Listen to that podcast.
Well, you know, it is funny because it's like, you know, my wife and I have lived in a number of different cities, and you know, we've traveled a fair amount, and you really have to sort of take advantage of where you're at, and you get back home, wherever home is, and you fall into some routine, and it sort of becomes a little boring. But I think the trick is to treat home like you're a tourist.
Treat home like you're a tourist. Yeah. As in, yeah, for you.
I mean, yeah, to constantly sort of be exploring new places and to kind of be excited about what you're seeing and realize how unique it is.
You'd like my bucket list idea. Do you know what I'm talking about? If you get, you should get in on this. I and a bunch of friends, I force a bunch of friends every year in Paris to write down, even though we all live here in some different age, to write down things that they want to do here that they haven't done before.
Oh, I love it. 5
things in increasing difficulty. So like, there might be a cafe down the road you've always wanted to go to.
Right.
Put that at number 1. And then at number 5, maybe you've always wanted to go into the church tower of Saint-Sulpice.
Yeah.
You know, so like that's a thing that you can tick off, and it gives you, you know,
I love it.
Be a tourist in your own city. Yeah,
I love it. That's great. Yeah,
I'm with you on that one. I'll send you a link so you can join our bucket
Sounds
list
good.
for 2022. But I said that I want to talk about the capturing the light as well. Is it challenging to paint this light that you seem quite transfixed by, or is it?
It can be challenging, but it's a good challenge. I paint with watercolor, which is challenging anyway. But I think that sort of appeals to the way my brain works. It's sort of it's an artistic pursuit, but there's also, it's kind of a left brain, right brain thing going on that you have to sort of figure out how best you're going to capture something. Yeah. I don't like saying capture because it feels like you're sort of hunting.
I put that word.
But I think with the light especially, I'm sort of a stickler for perspective and for proportions. I paint a lot of architecture, so I feel like the structure of things has to be fairly true to life. But when it comes to colors and light, I feel like that's where I can be a little bit more, use a little bit more artistic license.
Right.
And so I can push colors in a certain way or exaggerate certain tones.
Whereas you can't exaggerate the sheer physics of a building.
You could, but then it becomes a different thing. But for me, this is sort of where I choose to kind of exaggerate or to push reality a little bit. And I feel like I was thinking about this a lot as I was painting a few years ago, and I thought, what am I doing? What is this like? And I thought, I'm not capturing something. I'm not depicting something. I'm translating something.
Right.
So I can see a scene. I'm translating it through paint onto my paper.
Wow.
So then it became, I don't know, that sort of freed me up in a way that it's like, it doesn't need to be an accurate representation.
Like a photo,
yeah, I can take a photo.
Yeah. Any idiot.
I take a million photos.
Translating it to the page through paint and ink. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it becomes, it's a different sort of interpretation.
And your paintings, maybe because you do architectural stuff a lot, I don't have the words, you can help me, but like it means, I guess structurally, is the word structurally, like you've got it, the perspectives and stuff are so, it's important to get it exactly right like this. Yeah,
I think for me, and again, everyone's gonna have a different approach, but I think for me, linear perspective is very important to have something look fairly accurate.
Right. So what I was going to go on to is when you see other people technically who aren't as technically proficient as you, right? But you know that they're trying, and you see that somewhere. Does it make you a little bit like, ugh? Are you?
Well, Sure. I mean, sometimes it does.
Because I know that you could. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm trying to.
You're trying to get me to
no,
disparage other
no, because
artists.
it's not that at all. It's because I find it really fascinating. I tried to paint something a year ago, just out of I saw that Bob Dylan paints a lot.
Yeah.
And I was kind of inspired by it. I was like, this is a singer and he paints it. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
I was like, Oliver, give it a go. Who cares if it's not good at all?
Yeah.
And I did something, and I was... my wife's mom, my mother-in-law, is a really good painter, and she just put a few lines on the perspective of what I was doing. And I knew I'd got it wrong, but it was fascinating to me that she just thought differently, and you obviously do too. That you can see something's wrong and how to fix it.
Yeah,
it's like speaking a different language.
Yeah, there's so many analogies to speaking a different language or playing a musical instrument or cooking. And I think about all, whatever analogy is going to fit. But it's if somebody sort of creates a really nice meal and they've used too much salt, it's going to throw everything off a little bit. And so, there's oftentimes there's sort of one or two elements that if they're not right, it can kind of throw the piece off a little bit. So,
my wife said my picture was naivistic, and she said it was okay. Do you think that's a legit...
That is an incredibly loving and diplomatic answer.
So when someone says that, it means it's a terrible picture, basically?
No.
Here's a question for you. When you go... And I feel like you won't give me an honest answer here. When you go to is there any time that you see art or an exhibition and you go... He is taking the mickey. He can't paint. That is not, I know I know what you're doing, man or woman, and that is not fair. You should not be charging that.
That's funny. I am not a fan of sort of modern art or a lot of contemporary art, so a lot of that will kind of just make me angry.
Right. Stuff that you think maybe people could have just did too quickly and...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm really sort of in the school of, I want to create beauty. I want to create something that maybe makes you feel sort of joyful or calm or... I'm not into creating something to get an adverse reaction. I think a lot of contemporary art is there's sort of different. There's a lot of different reasons for making art, and some of them I don't enjoy as much as others.
Fair enough. It's kind of like I'm just trying to relate to you through what I do. It's like some people that do books or Instagram or podcasts or whatever, and maybe they go for a shock thing.
Yeah,
and it works, and you can get a lot of people.
Sure.
And I'm kind of like that's kind of cheating a little bit.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think so. Yeah, you can go for kind of an extreme reaction. I want to make people angry. I want to ruffle up some feathers. Okay, there's some legitimacy to that. That's not my personality. That's not what I enjoy.
Do you try doing that stuff sometimes? You go, I'm going to try something totally different.
I mean, I'll sometimes put in some little sort of subtle secrets into my paintings, but it's not to. I don't know. It's now you're gonna. Here we go.
No, I'm gonna change subject. There might be people listening, going, "What's his credentials? How does he make money in this city? Like, who are you to say you're an artist here? Like, you sell paintings?
Yeah, I sell paintings. I've had exhibits here in Paris in a couple different galleries, in Florence as well. I've had pieces in group shows in cities kind of around the world. I teach workshops. I teach online.
We met at one of your exhibitions in Orangerie.
Yes, exactly.
So cool.
Yeah, it was so great.
Such a beautiful building.
An incredible space. And
thankfully all the plants went in there.
That's right.
But how did it feel when you... Indeed. How do they tell you that you're going to be in the Grand Palais? How did that happen? How do you find out?
This was...
or were you knocking at the door long enough?
No, well, it was actually one of the friends I exhibited with at the Orangerie also knew about this Grand Palais exhibit a few years ago. And so she encouraged me to apply, and she kind of helped me with some of the translation on the application website.
So it was the French one, because there's a French and a Swede there, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And you know, you submit a number of pieces. In this particular show in the Grand Palais, each person can display one piece.
Right.
You submit 5 or so, and they say yay or nay, or, you know.
And so you send like a photo scan kind of.
Yeah, you send a few photos, you send a little dossier, a little CV.
Yeah.
You know, this is who I am, this is what I do. And then they have a sort of a selection committee.
What happens if you had sold one of the paintings before they got back to you? What if they contact you like, hey, we like number 1, and you're like, oh, I sold that to someone Japan.
Well, with that show, they give you enough sort of heads up, enough sort of lead time that if you need to paint something else to hang on the wall, you've got a little bit of time.
And then how did you find out that they'd accepted it?
It comes through an email, and
was that exciting?
Absolutely. There's champagne and
I feel like you were
dancing
it a little bit. You kind of, But so what? So they send you an email, say they like a picture.
Yeah.
Can you tell us which one it is?
Yeah, for this one coming up, it's a rooftop scene, kind of a sunset, similar to what some of your listeners saw in the video.
You can say the Patreon members were treated to the view from the balcony.
So it's a piece of that view. It's kind of a larger, painting larger than others that I've done.
How big are we talking?
It's maybe a meter wide, kind of landscape.
Yeah. And for American viewers, that's 3 feet.
3 feet, something like that. Yeah.
And so that's going to be in the Grand Palais ephémère.
Exactly.
The one on the Champ de Mars.
Exactly.
When's that going to be? I want to go in there.
That is February of 22.
Excellent. So that's going to be something I'm going to go check out.
Excellent. Yeah.
You too, I imagine.
Yes, I will be there every day.
When you're in there and people are looking at it, how hard is it to resist the temptation to go, I did that one?
Well, the temptation is to kind of sneak up behind them and see what they're saying about
it. Well, I have no doubt you've done that before. It'd be weird if you hadn't done that before.
Well, actually, it was funny when my friends and I had this exhibit in the Orangerie. We were sitting at this little table because we were selling books and some other postcards, and we could see people come in. We could see them from a distance because it was such a large space, and they'd walk around and look at each piece. You know, you could just tell by their body language. And sometimes there was this great couple that the woman was so enthusiastic about each piece. We couldn't hear them because they were too far away, but just her body language. She was so enthusiastic about each piece, and the husband, I assume it was her husband, was so grumpy. And it was just this hilarious kind of Abbott and Costello scene. And so we started narrating them as they were moving around the space. And
maybe, and time's running away from us a little bit, so maybe we can finish on this idea. Can you tell me, from an artist's perspective, what's good behavior as someone in a gallery, as a potential customer or a viewer? What's good behavior? What do you like it when people do, or what do you hate? Especially because a lot of people that come in, the percentage of customer visitor must be mostly visitor, right?
Yeah.
So what are the faux pas and what are the things?
Well, I think, if you're in a gallery where it's sort of a living artist, maybe the artist is there in the room.
Yeah. Okay. That's the situation we're in.
Yeah. Right? I would sort of, if you've got any criticism, maybe keep that to yourself. Don't say your kid could paint this.
Has that happened?
Not to me, no.
Okay,
no. But, it is, most people, the vast majority of people are very complimentary, very supportive. Sometimes you'll have some sort of comments that I'm sure they mean it as a compliment, but it comes across as a very sort of critical, oh, I wish you'd use more green in your paintings kind of a thing, which is such an odd.
Except I can see how people might think that is a compliment almost, they just phrase it wrong. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of negative comments come from a good place.
Yes, maybe that's true.
In feedback, like obviously not the not the worst of the worst ones, but like something like that. Maybe like I always try and see from the other person. It helps me some comments that I get. But you know what I mean? Like maybe.
Sure. Yeah, maybe. I think most people mean well.
Yeah. So
yes.
what's something that we should do? Like come up and introduce yourself, or
yeah, absolutely. Say hi. What brought you in? I mean, you don't have to be fake and say, "Oh my God, I love everything you do." If that's not true. But I mean, what a great chance if you're in a gallery and there's the artist. What an incredible opportunity.
What would be a good question then? What's something that you like hearing? I'm serious. Like, do people come up and say what? Like, because I hear a lot of people hate hearing. What's your inspiration? I hear that's the worst question that you can ask a creative person. What do you think about that?
I don't mind that question. I think inspiration is, that's kind of the water we swim in. So it's, and you're always sort of chasing inspiration or waiting for inspiration. I think it can be kind of a double-edged sword because I think is it Picasso? Somebody has some great quote about,
I think it was Picasso.
Inspiration can find you, but it better find you working, basically.
Yeah.
I'm butchering that, but sounds better in French. But yeah. But yeah, do the hard work and then the inspiration kind of comes. It's interesting because I'm sort of living this dream, this life of the American in Paris and painting this city. Especially at the Orangerie exhibit, so many, because of where that is, so many local Parisians would come in and they would see our art. And it was all sort of Paris scenes. And the reactions were really interesting because these are people who have grown up in this city. They've known it their whole lives. I see it through a foreigner's eyes. So somebody said, why all the red cafes? And I thought, are you kidding me? Like, this is what Paris looks like. And for this person, it was so
fascinating,
unusual for him. And other people say, oh, you absolutely nailed the light. This is exactly what it feels like at this certain time of day. And, so that's super kind of great to hear.
Yeah. I love it. Well, it's a nice note to finish on. The thought of... I don't want to use the word capturing either, but translating Paris to the sketchbook or the page or the canvas. For people who want to see more of your stuff, I'm going to have all the information in the show notes below, but also put a comment on Alex's Instagram page. Say hello. Tell him that you heard him on the podcast. And from what I know, you're very interactive on social media.
Yeah, especially Instagram. It's a really incredible community. And I have sort of ongoing conversations with people around the world. And I really, really love this. There's so many creatives out there, so many fellow creatives that, I don't know, we gotta support each other, right?
Good. On that note, guys, go and check him out. Support his work, even if just following, and maybe they'll see you in Paris one day in an exhibition. I hope so. But thank you for sharing your story and your time with me, Alex.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So there you have it, Alex Hillkurtz, aka Alex Hill, if you look him up on IMDb, like I did in more detail later, to see some of the amazing films that he's worked on. But also go and check out his art. So alexhillkurtzart.com. I'll put a link in the show notes below. But really lovely guy. Check him out, as I said, on Instagram. Alex Hillkurtz, Hillkurtz. And say hello from me. Why not? Why not? He's very active on Instagram. Now, changing focus a little bit. First, I was really thrilled to see how many comments were coming in about Bucket List. That thing went really viral. And it's given me sort of focus for the rest of the year. Lots of things to do. I'm looking forward to sharing that with all you guys. But I want to talk more specifically about a couple of reviews that came in. The reason I read these out, twofold. One is because I just think it's really nice that some of you guys take the time to put a review like this on my show. It's the first thing people will see when they look it up. And it's really touching that you guys do it. So I'll read the two latest ones, both of which are really, really lovely. So the first review comes in from the United States. And the name is Escapism at its Best. The headline, tremendous, 5 stars. Whether you live in Paris, want to visit, or just want a healthy dose of escapism in these uncertain times, listen to this podcast. Oliver transports you there. His familiar and down-to-earth personality acts as a brilliant vehicle for the city and cast of characters within. That's a very nicely written review, escapism at its best. It's almost like you do that for your career. I appreciate that. Thank you. Tremendous. What a good word, tremendous. The other one is also really positive, but unfortunately will leave us on a sad note at the end of this episode, I'm afraid to say. But let's start with the positive. It's 5 stars from Bailey371. Oliver finds the most wonderful people with the most interesting stories and showcases them on the Eiffel Tower. From supermodels to antique dealers, writers, tour guides, chefs, fishermen to old ladies sitting by the Canal Saint-Martin, you get a real feel for the city and at times even get swept up in its magic. Oliver shares personal stories too, and if you listen from start to finish, you'll have the pleasure of discovering multiple red threads akin to in-jokes that make you feel part of the larger community. I highly recommend this to anyone who loves Paris, France, armchair travel, or just plain old great stories. There you go, Bailey. Very kind of you to write that. I hope you guys who've listened this far feel like you're in the big community. And it's true, there are so many in-jokes all the time. Sometimes that it takes months before people recognize. Someone messaged me the other day to say in the Montmartre Cat episode, they noticed that I made a reference to ligers, even though it was like a year before Roger Liger, our children's book, came out. Hey, you think anything's accidental around here? No, it's not. It's all about fun. But as I did warn, this episode's actually going to end on a sad note, and it was kind of touched on in that last message from Bailey, who referred to the different guests out on the show. And I think a few of you guys would have seen on social media that the fisherman, Fred, who was on the podcast just a couple months ago, and I'm getting quite sad just saying it, he very tragically passed away unexpectedly. I don't know for sure, but I understand it was an accident on the roads, and he was 45 years old, had 3 fairly young children. If you listen to that episode, you'll know that he was a really kind guy. He's the one who took me fishing for a couple of hours on one beautiful morning, and we were looking for the big catfish that we didn't catch. And I knew him well. I played basketball with him for years in the indoor Marais court that I've referenced on the show before, and at the outdoor Marais court as well. And just got the text through from one of the other basketball players that he passed away, and it was really sad. I think I went back and I listened to that episode again. I looked through the pictures. I read the text messages that I'd shared with him, and I don't know. If nothing else, it's just a reminder that life is short and we got to make the most of it. Yeah. So on that note, everybody, I hope that you're making the most of your day, of your week, of your life, because it is precious. And I don't know what else to say really, other than this episode it goes to the memory of Fred, who was kind enough to share his story with all of us. So I got a lot of messages from you guys saying that you felt that you knew him and were sad as well to hear the news, which is it's a really lovely thing to hear, and it's testament to his character. Thoughts with you, Fred, a man who truly made the most of his time. That's for everybody else. I'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you for listening. Au revoir.